often have you felt restricted to spiritual practices that often seem outdated and of little relevance in today's world? Are you discouraged to express your own creative talents and develop spiritual practices that are uniquely you? The Liturgical Rebels podcast is for people like you who want to reimagine and reconstruct their faith and spiritual practices. It's for those who want to reshape belief and journey closer to God's wholeness with peace, justice, and flourishing, not just for themselves, but for the earth and all its inhabitants. Today I will be in conversation with Naomi Lawrence. Naomi is a New York fiber artist based in East Harlem. She works with acrylic yarn to create oversized two-dimensional crochet flowers, trees, and wildlife. Her site-specific installations are sewn onto chain-link fences in parks and public spaces. She is originally from England, but her first installation, created in 2014, called Blue Iris, endeared her to the East Harlem community that she now calls home. Her installation take a few months to create, but are generally approved by the city to stay in place for up to a year. We will discuss Naomi's yarn bombing installations, which bring joy and light to dark places and have a positive impact on communities. We will also discuss her involvement in Inner Change, a Christian order that focuses on living out their faith in their local contexts. Naomi, it's a delight to have you with me on the Liturgical Rebels.
It's great to see you again and to have this chat. It's been way too long.
Oh, it certainly has been. I think I was trying to remember how long ago it was that Tom and I met you in the UK before you and your husband Chris moved to Harlem, to live in Harlem. And when did you move?
So we moved here in 2014. We've been married 15 years this year. So I think
it was a little bit before that. Yeah.
Somewhere between 10 and 15 years ago is when I met you in London.
Yes. Yeah. And I have wonderful memories of that. I remember you showing me, I think, one of the first yarn bombing projects that you did. And it was kind of indelibly imprinted on my mind because I was very impressed with that. And since that time, then when we saw you in Harlem, I should say, you took me to see the Blue Irises, which I think was the first one that you did here in the States. And again, it just made a huge impression on me. I thought, what a wonderful thing to do. And I remember you saying to me at that time that part of your desire was to bring light into dark places.
Yeah.
And I followed you on Instagram, and I think, yes, she's been bringing light into dark places. So tell me a little bit about your journey, how you became a fiber artist, how you got into yarn bombing and the things that you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, well, thank you. I remember when you visited, and I remember sitting on the floor of our old apartment, which we've been in several apartments since then, and seeing your excitement. And that's really been what's kept me going over the years since 2012 when I did my first yarn bomb back in Cambridge. It's always been people's reactions. It's always been how much joy it brought other people and myself. And that's really been the essence of why I've kept going. So I got into crochet actually through a group of women from church who were learning different crafting things together, like felting or embroidery, and crochet was one of those things. And it just clicked for me. I was a florist. I trained as a florist at the time, and I was loving doing all the floral displays, but it wasn't the thing. When it didn't quite click. I loved it. I was good at it, but there was something about it that wasn't everything I was looking for. And when I found crochet and then started to use it out in the street, something about it, something about the energy and the way it affected people and almost stopped people in their tracks. And the stories, the testimonies I would get, that's why I carried on. And coming to New York, wanting to do something different than bike racks and trees, and starting to do the flowers, and it all the parts of my life started to fit together. I don't mean to be poetic, but I just knew this was the thing I wanted to do.
Wonderful. Now, most of our listeners probably don't know what yarn bombing means. And so why don't you tell us a little bit more about yarn bombing as an art form?
So the way I saw yarn bombing back, in like 2010, I think it was around then, people would cover things in the streets with knitted blankets or knitted pieces, scarves, whatever. So trees would have sweaters on. Bike racks would have cozies. Sometimes you'd see a sculpture, like the bull on Wall Street had a crochet cover for a time. And I did one back in Liverpool, the famous lamb banana, which was meant to be a symbol of Liverpool being the European capital of culture at the time, because of the trade that they'd done in bananas, or I can't really recall, but I decided to cover that as a piece. And yeah, I mean, it's evolved. It's definitely evolved over the 14 years since I first saw yarn bombing. People are doing it everywhere, whether it's on top of a mailbox, or some people have covered buildings. You can do anything with yarn. And the beautiful thing about it that I love is that, everybody can do it. Your granny can do it, your sisters, your brothers, and everybody looks at it and says, oh, I know what that is. That's a sweater. That's crochet. That's yarn. So it's a new type of street art that's basically become huge. And you see it everywhere. So
wonderful. And you don't I think the original yarn bombing was people going out in the middle of the night and kind of putting something around a tree. But your art installations are certainly not like that. You do site-specific installations that are often commissioned by council or churches or things like that, and can be sewn to chain link fences, public places. So tell us a little bit about that and help people to see what your artwork looks like.
Okay. So yeah, that's what I mean. It's evolved. This art form has evolved from the guerrilla knitting, as they say, going out in the dead of night, which I used to do with a head torch and, all in secret, that kind of thing. So now, over the years, of the 10 years I've lived in New York, now I, have to submit a license to the Parks Department. I'm getting city and state funding to do like 20, 30-foot murals. So imagine you're walking down a normal, average New York avenue, and you go past what you think is a school, but there's a giant chain link fence around it. But then suddenly you realize it's probably half, because the whole thing would be a lot, half covered in these ginormous 7-foot, 10-foot crochet flowers. And you stop and you're not quite sure what this is. Is it a school? Is this street art? Is this granny's blanket? That's my art. My art will basically, it's in the wrong place. Something about it's in the wrong place, but also it makes you smile. And you have to stop, take a picture, and then carry on, and then go and tell somebody about it. That's basically what my art is now. And it makes me smile just talking about it. So
it makes me smile too. I remember, I hope I got this right, that you actually had to take down one of your installations because the traffic was stopping and you were creating traffic jams.
Yeah, that was back in sleepy old Cambridge, back in England. So I'd covered the trees on a roundabout. I don't know what you call it here, but a roundabout, where you go one way. And the council. Oh no, it was in Liverpool. That was another one in Liverpool. And they said it was too dangerous. It was distracting the drivers. So they asked me if I would take it down. But what really stunned me is then they put advertisements up for health insurance or something, medical insurance. Like, well, that's just as distracting but ugly. So no logic. Just there's always one person who doesn't like it or
Yes.
think goes against the grain, and that's it. We're always pushing the boundaries. The people I work with are trying to do things that not. I don't really do like the big political stuff. I just make inconvenient, beautiful things, and sometimes people get upset about it. But I'll take it down if they moan enough. I'll take it down.
But it sounds as though if you've got the permits, then, you should be able to leave it there, I suppose, so.
Yeah, that one I didn't have a permit. It was just a couple of trees in the middle of a roundabout, and I
Mhm.
didn't think it would harm anybody. But I've had people scream at me because I put things on a fence, and they said it was going to harm wildlife. It's not
Uh-huh.
going to harm wildlife, but I have to be open to feedback, and I'm always respectful to that as well.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh, do you get any of them vandalized?
Not often. I can probably count on one hand the intentional vandalism. I've had a couple of pieces stolen, which always hurts,
Mhm.
even now, because honestly, if you wrote to me and said why you wanted it, I would probably make you one anyway. Um, so, yeah, I can count on one hand. I've got friends in the same field who've had pieces burnt, which
Mm.
is just insane. Um, but no, I mean, most people see them as a gift. And what happened from day one with the blue iris is when it would unravel. So a part of it came unraveled. And then I came back the next day to fix it, and somebody else had fixed it for me
Oh, how lovely.
in a different way. They'd
Uh-huh.
wrapped it, but that's the thing. People see it as soon as it's on the street in New York. It belongs to everybody.
Uh-huh.
So somebody else thought, well, I'll look after it, and that's a sign of respect.
Yes, very much so. Now, I know that some of your art pieces, you don't do the whole thing yourself. You do it as a community project. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, that's definitely something I've dipped into over the years. Sometimes it works very well, and other times it can make it harder. I
Mm.
will say that. I'll be very upfront about that. The piece I'm going to work on in the next few months is all my own work, and I needed to do that. As an artist, I need to do one myself,
Mhm.
see how that goes. But one of the most successful was a giant orange monarch butterfly that I started to host sessions through the summer in a local deli, and people were invited to make, I think, 5 or 6 inch orange squares. And then I, with the help of some other women, sewed them together and then transformed it into a butterfly. And it hung
Oh,
on the school fence. I think it was about 17 foot wide. And it
that
was,
was absolutely beautiful, that one.
oh,
I
it was
remember.
stunning. It was very moving. And again, the impact it had on the neighborhood was incredibly moving too. And so when I had to take it down because it gets dirty after a year or two, people were sad that it had gone.
Mhm.
And I do still have it. It's just extremely faded, and it's in storage right now.
Mm. Yeah. No, I remember seeing that one several times on Instagram because I love to see the new installations that you
Mm.
put up on Instagram and sometimes showing your community groups working on things. And does it help to bring people together when they're working on things together like this?
Yeah, it does. The group that met to do that monarch, friendships were formed from that. And actually, what I've seen is a couple of the women who are involved, they now run their own community projects. So
Mm.
they are probably working with the community more than I am now. I've taken a slight sidestep, and but I'm watching them be prolific and working in the neighborhoods that they've grown up in, and feeling like it's, that they wanted to lead their own, with seniors or younger people. So it's been, that's the natural organic way that people grow, and that projects and the next generation, or the next person to take on a big project. And I've enjoyed watching that happen. as well. But yeah, natural friendships and seeing women support one another, even outside of the circle, that they would suddenly be like meeting up to go out together. And that's the beauty of it. I'm just the initial facilitator.
Yeah. Yeah. How does this impact your faith? Well, firstly, I should say two things I suppose I want to ask is how does it impact your faith, and how does your faith impact what you do?
Yeah, so I was giving this some thought since you first asked me to do this. Now, I think a lot of what I do, and the creativity that, or a way I've found to channel my creativity, is because I need to find a place in the world where I fit. I'm married to, I'm not going to call him a theologian, but a well-read, Chris.
Yes.
He's got a big brain. He thinks a lot. He loves to read. He loves to study, and he loves to preach and all of that. And I'm not, that's not me. I'm the complete flip side of that. And I've needed to find a way for my faith to be out there, not out there. I guess I find it difficult to talk about. And I think what I found myself doing is making beautiful things because God's given me, I believe the God of my understanding has given me a gift to do this. And this is my way of showing that I love people and I love where I live, and I want to bring joy to people. And as an artist, that's kind of the way it's kind of worked out for me. And I, when I said I was doing floristry, it wasn't enough to satisfy people with huge budgets for weddings. That didn't do it. So when I was starting to do street art, and just honestly, the stories and the testimonials I get are so incredibly moving. I don't believe I would be doing that if I didn't have a faith. I think as an artist, I found what I consider to be a very simple way to give and create beauty in my neighborhood. And it brings me a lot of joy, and I don't have to overthink it. I don't have to be well-read, well-spoken. I can crochet and I can make beautiful, beautiful pieces, hang them in the neighborhood, and just watch the impact that it has on people as they watch their neighborhood being loved.
What kind of responses do you get? You've mentioned the wonderful responses. Can you think of one or two that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I've actually just started writing about them. Somebody advised me to start writing the stories down.
That's a good idea, yes.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, they are the reason that I continue. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of the pictures I think I sent you, La Flor de mi Madre, was a 24-foot mural of giant flowers that represented the national flowers of the demographic in the neighborhood. And the site is opposite a nursing facility with people dealing with all sorts of chronic illness, rehabilitation, and some end-of-life care. And a lady she wrote me an email and sent me a photograph of herself standing next to the giant dahlia, which represented Mexico. And she said, when I first saw this mural, she said she was undergoing cancer treatment. And she said when she said to herself, when I'm in remission, I will go back and have my photograph taken next to that flower. And she sent me the photograph.
Oh,
so
wow.
I love that I was part of that story, and that she wanted to share it with me was really powerful. And another one, a mum wandering the neighborhood looking for a new potential school for her child because she's being bullied in her current one. And she walks past a school fence with a giant peace sign made out of crochet flowers. And she said, that was my sign. I was looking for a sign, and that was the sign. And she's now the PTA president, and her daughter start thriving in the school.
Oh,
So it's
lovely.
just these tiny, huge stories that have impacted other people's lives, whether the artwork is a symbol or a sign. Um, I love it when people share the stories with me.
Hmm. Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, it's an insight into their lives. And also, like, what an honor that they trust me with that as well.
Yes. Yeah, I think, I mean, any kind of artist or writer or anything loves to get feedback. And yet, we often don't get that. But it's so, so special
Yeah.
when we do. And it's something that can really keep us going and can spur further creativity, I think,
Yeah.
in us, which is wonderful. Do you have a favorite art installation?
I have a couple of answers for that because every year I get to do a private installation in Cold Spring, New York, which is a couple of hours away from where we live, and it's on the wall of a yarn store. And but it's not even about the work; it's about the relationship that I have with the store owner and even the wider community there. And it was just a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, I was having a hard time, and Chris booked me an Airbnb to have a couple of nights away. And I'd never been to Cold Spring, and I went up there, and then I wandered down the high street on my own, and I did something that I never do. I went into the yarn store and I told the lady, the owner, what I do.
Mm.
That's not me. I don't often talk about what I do. Other people say, "Oh, you know what Naomi does." And I told her, and she reached out to me. And this is the third year. No, this is the fourth year. I'm going to do an installation, and it's in a couple of weeks. I'll do another installation on the wall outside, and the community has come to expect it.
Mm.
And she wrote to me recently, and she said it's one of her favorite things about having the store is this kind of thing where she meets an artist and we have this relationship. And I love it. I know her family, I know her customers, I know her staff. And she also gives me a couple of days away to have a retreat in the apartment above the store. So it's become this mutual relationship.
That's
And
lovely.
and
Mhm.
I don't know what God is doing with that. Does it matter?
No.
It's just so lovely. And I look forward to it every year. And then Chris comes up with the kids and we have some time together and, coffee with a friend there. And so that's a lovely one. But
What
I
what
also,
kind of what do you include in that installation?
so the first year, it was actually the customers that all made roses. It's all
Ah,
crochet, and then I made a piece for them, and then the next year I did a giant flower. Then so it's always floral,
huh.
and the owner just says, "Hey, would you do this flower this year?" That's it. And then it's also Worldwide Knit in Public Day, the day after the installation.
Ah,
So then they have like a whole event, and everybody comes and knits and crochets outside. So yeah, it's just something. It kind of feels like a gift to me,
mhm.
and so it's yeah that, and I don't mean to be selfish, but I kind of really love it and look forward to it every year. um but then I also loved the butterfly. The monarch will go down as one of the best experiences of my life and of my artistic career, I guess. It was just so impactful, and it came at just the right time as well, because a lot of the immigrants in our neighborhood were being, we had a different president then, and there were ICE officers at the subway stations, and people were scared to travel around New York with, undocumented. And this beautiful symbol of hope was just, well, we put the tagline, "Migration is beautiful."
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
yeah, I think it was just like the perfect time to do it.
It's a very kind of subversive but powerful message that that kind of thing can give to people. I would think, and
Yeah.
uh, I can imagine that living in Harlem has its challenges as well as its kind of delights in the work that you do. I would think sometimes too.
Yeah, actually, one of the main challenges has been to try and work out as a white incomer where to be, how to be, and it's been good for me to do that, to step aside sometimes and just check myself,
Uh-huh.
because there's limited funding available as well, and the fund that I actually apply for every 2 years, I've never known anybody to not get that. So that's open to everybody, and yeah, everybody gets something. But there are some grants and stuff which are very limited, and sometimes I just don't apply.
Mhm.
It's just been having taken the time to discern really, like where to be and how to be, and that's why it's been so great to watch um, other people kind of taking the lead on projects. It doesn't always have to be me anymore. As it,
Mhm.
I might have been the first one to do yarn bombing in East Harlem, but I certainly won't be the last.
That's
So
lovely. Yeah. Kind of leaving a legacy in Harlem.
yeah, but I also love that people quite quickly forget that. They're like, oh, I don't know who started it, so it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it still is kind
yeah,
of a legacy, I think, because I mean, I've looked at some of your projects and I thought, boy, that's using a lot of yarn. How on earth do you afford to do this? Because you don't always, you rarely get paid for what you do.
yeah, and that's been a journey again over the last 10 years, is getting to the position where I can't just pay for this. Like Chris and I, we're with Interchange, which is a Christian order, and we're self no we're self-funded basically, so we
Mhm.
have to raise the support for us to be here. So we both are bivocational. I'm teaching in a day center for adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities, and get a good wage from that. But I have to be realistic. To afford rent in New York City and living costs, I can't just work for free.
Yeah.
So that's definitely been a bit bumpy. Applying for grants to do the bigger stuff has been brilliant. But asking people to partner with us and to prayerfully consider, do they want to be part of supporting what we do here? And I've got some supporters on Patreon. That's been great. And yeah, the commissions and stuff really help as well. But I still want to be generous. The heart of this was always generosity.
Mhm.
And but I get people who say, "Oh, I've just cleaned out my mother-in-law's house and I've got boxes of yarn. Will you take it?" And I'll always take it and redistribute it, to seniors or at the day center where I work, or when I can, I'll use it. But I need bright colors. So when I get a whole box of white, it's like, "Oh, that's great, but not going to be doing a white flower anytime soon." Not on the streets of New York.
And
Um,
so,
gets so dirty.
I've got a couple of big boxes of yarn out in the garage that I thought, I wish you were a little closer,
Yeah,
that I could get them
fortune
to
to
you
it.
because
Yeah,
yeah, I would like to. I mean, I do still do some knitting, but nowhere near as much knitting as I used to do.
yeah,
And, they need to go somewhere, but probably they're not all the nice bright colors that you need anyway, I suspect.
yeah, yeah. I'm trying to use bright colors when I can, because
Mhm.
again, that's something that again people love to see bright colors. But yeah, so the church where we go actually have just asked me to be their artist in residence, and I can do what I want with that role. It's
Mm.
unfunded at the moment, but that's a really great thing to be able to say, okay, this is a role that I've been given. Do people want to partner with me to enable that to happen, to at
Yeah.
least make the materials? We can get some materials through projects that give away a lot of things, but also paying for my time and any sessions that I run. So again, it's actually an opportunity for me to connect with people who we've been in touch with for many years, who love what we do and maybe would like to be more involved. So
Mhm.
again, it becomes like a mutual, that's the way we look at ministry sometimes, is what we've all trying to do a different part in it, and we're not
Uh-huh.
all available to crochet giant flowers, but lots of people would like to be involved somehow, whether that's donating yarn or coming up with workshop ideas, or yeah, there's lots of different ways that people can support.
Tell us a little about interchange.
So Interchange is I sometimes describe it as like Christian not-for-profit. It's basically people from all over the world. There's about 100 of us, mainly families, who feel called to well, it's a Christian order. So we're kind of living in the upside down kingdom. We're kind of stepping away from organized religion, organized ministry, and kind of in our contexts coming up with, whatever it is that you feel called to do. So Chris is working with seniors. I'm working with crochet and weaving with adults with developmental disabilities. Some people are doing like soccer programs and after school clubs, or working with addicts in London. And so everybody's kind of finding themselves where they are and seeing what the need is. And what's different is we're not kind of helicoptering in for the day, doing the thing, and then going home again. We're living in our context as well. So when we came here 10 years ago, for Chris is an ordained UCC minister. After 5 years, he was like, that isn't what I'm supposed to do. I don't think that's my calling right now. So he stepped aside. We stayed in the same neighborhood, but he connected and tapped into the seniors living in low-income housing around the corner who are isolated. And now he has, 3 electric bikes that they can take 2 people out at a time on, and he's taking them out around the parks and taking them on day trips and cooking together and playing music together. So it looks like whatever it looks like. But what's brilliant is that we have 100 people who kind of are like-minded, and we live with the same commitments. Like we've taken commitments of celebration and simplicity and community and prayer, and so we're all living in the same way. We've committed to that, and like we're one big family, which you don't always find in church. That we found that really hard to find in a church. We found it in a community instead.
Mm-hmm. How do you interact as a community when you're global?
So on the ground, we have a team. Our team is still pretty new, actually having a proper team launch in a couple of weeks because it's taken a few years to form it. So there's 2 families. So we eat together and pray together on a Tuesday night, which is tonight. We do learning community together. So the whole of Interchange has the same learning materials, and it's all written by different teams. So we take it in turns to write that material, and we go through our commitments. So justice is our commitment that we're going through right now. And every Monday we sit down and we do learning community together, and everybody's doing the same thing. We're all praying for the same team once a week as well. And then every 2 years, we all come together. So this summer, we are all going to South Africa to have an Interchange family conference. Wonderful. And for a lot of the families, that's their family holiday as well. They don't often get a family holiday because of low funds or, availability. So we all come together. And then in 2 years' time, we'll have another gathering. And we also have, so anybody who's a team leader, they meet together once a year, sometimes internationally, sometimes locally, regionally. So the US will get together. And yeah, it's just incredible because I think we'd been searching for something like that. And it's very reminiscent of how we lived back in Hackney as well when we were in London. It's almost like we've been in Interchange longer than we have. Because we've always had those values and we've always found people around us. But when we came to New York, it just felt a little bit harder to connect with people. So yeah, Interchange has kind of plugged that gap for us.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Naomi, is there, what else would you like to tell us about your artwork? Or about your life? I know you have, let's stick to your artwork, I think.
Yeah, I've got 4 children who keep me plenty busy. Gosh. What do I want to tell you? I guess I still, as an artist, I still question, what's next. And I'm always open to what's the next thing. And I don't necessarily claim that I will make crochet flowers forever. I don't know whether that is it forever, but that's what I'm doing right now. And it's what I'm known for. And it's helped shape my identity as an artist, as a woman, as a female artist, as a Christian to some extent. It's given me a way to create. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. And I still wrestle with it a little bit, how like my art and faith kind of overlap, but it brings me a lot of joy. I mean, it's very stressful sometimes and deadlines and it takes over my life. But when I put the piece up and step back and have that moment of like, oh, it's done, there's just no feeling like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not addicted to that feeling, but I just, it brings me so much satisfaction to step back, feel I've done a good job, and as I said earlier, watching people interact with it and being that kind of fly on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
especially since most of the stuff I do is in my neighborhood. So I'm seeing these pieces all the time. And I don't have many up at the moment, but yeah, I just think it's an incredible, I'm just so lucky that I found this. I found something that really makes sense to me and I just do it really well. And I'm allowed to say that. I'm allowed to
Mm-hmm.
say that.
Oh,
I
you
make
certainly
really
do it really well.
well.
Yes.
But again, this isn't what I might do forever. And I don't know what's next.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always open to, especially with this new artist in residence role, I don't know what that will look like. Because you know what? Not everybody wants to crochet.
Uh-huh.
So, and weaving has opened up a new door for me. I don't weave, but I teach weaving and it helping other people, especially the adults with developmental disabilities, discover that they have this creativity and they love it.
Mm.
It's just to be alongside people is such an honor.
It's
So
wonderful.
I don't even remember what the question was, but
No, that definitely answered it. Telling us more about your artwork.
yeah.
So, what are the best ways for people to connect to you?
Instagram is the main tool I use. I mean, I dipped into X, formerly known as Twitter, but I don't really use that. I'm a visual person. I use Instagram. I use my Instagram story. I have a Facebook and I have a website. Did I say I have a Facebook? That's what my mum and dad would say. I do use Facebook. But yeah, Naomi Lawrence Art, that's my Instagram, and that's the best way to find me. Or naomilawrence.com is my website. And yeah, I will keep putting up pictures of everything I make, whether it's small or large, and I love to watch how pieces fade over time as well. So I'll quite
Mm.
often put pictures up of how it's doing now, but I have a lot of fun with what I post online.
Oh, your Instagram feed is inspirational. It really is, and I highly recommend it to our listeners to look you up on Instagram and
Mhm.
follow you. I'm often showing your artwork to friends and suggesting they follow you, and many of them do. And
Thank you.
it's definitely inspirational. So thank you, Naomi, for sharing with us today. It is. I hate to keep using that word inspirational, but it is. It's inspirational for me, and I think for many others to hear not just what you do, but the impact it has on the lives of others. That is just so special. And so thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you for inviting me to come onto the show.
Today, I have been in conversation with Naomi Lawrence, a fiber artist known for her yarn bombing installations. She shared her desire